answer your questions without telling you a story. I'm going to go right ahead into this game. Guess who's this boy? The 3 hints I can give you. Number 1, you can't Google. His name starts with a J, so we'll call him J. He's from the last century. Of course, he has something to do with vaccines. And that's what he said. Hope lies in dreams and imagination, in the courage of those who dare to make dreams into reality. I'll end my talk with the answer. So you'll have to just wait through it. What are we going to do today? What will you learn? Number 1, I'm going to give you a brief, big picture of vaccines in general. Number 2, what's the goal? Is to answer your question. I've bundled them into 7 questions into periodic intervals. That 5 is all the questions kept on pouring in. By the way, I have over 56, 60 questions. I've tried to bundle them as much as possible. And 3:30 is typically, our duration is 30 minutes. I'll try to land between 3:30 and 3:45. Absolute hard stop at 3:45. I hear there's a Ravens game today. And then what is my objective? What's not the goal? So it's not my goal to pressure you into making any decision that you're not comfortable with. I'm here to inform you. I'm not here to persuade you one way or the other. At the same time, I'm passionate about this subject. Please don't misinterpret my passion for certainty. I will come across passionate at certain points. And the last thing is that I'm giving you my best available information as of today. Information can change. It's a very dynamic process. And I'll be laying out a lot of facts. If you think one of my facts is inaccurate, it's your job to challenge me. Make sure that we remain honest there. And last point before I start is, if there are other questions that I'm unable to get to today, this will not be an open mic sort of regular conference. I promise you that I'll follow up next Wednesday to answer your remaining questions and allow you to ask me counter questions and have more of a conversation. So, number 1, what have vaccines done for us so far? I'm not going to be reading the slides, but I can tell you, an infectious disease doctor who's seen about 25,000 cases in my career, I have not seen a total of 10 cases of all these illnesses. What a dumb doc, right? He has never seen mumps, never seen pertussis, and that's all because of vaccines. So these diseases have been eliminated almost. There were over 45,000 cases of polio in late 1960s and 70s before the vaccine started. That number dropped to 900 cases after the polio vaccine came out. So that's the impact. The second impact, we all talk of life expectancy. Human life expectancy has gone up from 40 to 82. What we don't talk about is 90% of that increase is due to just 2 factors. 1, reduction in infant mortality. A lot of babies would die at birth. And second is vaccine. If you see that spike right there, that's what vaccines have done to mankind. Now, COVID vaccine, we know that 2 of the vaccines are likely to be approved this month, or at least they're going for approval. But there are many in the pipeline, nearly a dozen. Most of them are RNA vaccines or DNA vaccines, and some are the old-fashioned killed virus vaccines. Of course, today we're talking about a special delivery. So these are the 2 vaccines I'll be focusing on. One is from Pfizer and the other one is from Moderna. And it's important for us to understand how they work, like a Trojan horse. So we have an mRNA inside a lipid particle, like a fat molecule. And it's sent into the body. The body does all the work. So there is no live vaccine. There's no live virus here. You're sending a message to the body to print the virus. I was thinking of an analogy, and I think an analogy is, Fermin needs 10,000 copies of a document. I could either make 10,000 copies of the document, put them in boxes, deliver them to Fermin, or I could send him an email with a Word document, and Fermin could print 10,000 copies himself. That's what this vaccine is doing. Traditionally, we would print 10,000 documents, deliver to the body. And that was a slow, tedious process. That's why it took very long. So in general terms, you can read the slide for technology. In general terms, we are just sending an email to the body with an attachment of mRNA, and the body is going to just make and print those documents. The 3 or 4 leading candidates and what they will be doing, I just want to give you a broad overview. The Pfizer vaccine, they're all going to require cold environments, some more than others. Pfizer is going to require minus 70 degrees, Moderna and Johnson & Johnson around minus 20, and Oxford is just going to require a regular fridge. All of them are 2 doses except Johnson & Johnson. The way to remember, 2 J's, 1 dose. And other ones, all of them are either 3 or 4 weeks apart. That's what most likely we are about to see. Which brings me to the first bundle of your questions. And you will see I've picked the common ones first. This was the commonest question. Will it be mandated? As of today, it is not mandated in the UMS system. As of today, where things are 6 months from now, I don't know. I can tell you some of the private companies are actually mandating it before government. If you look at Australian airline Qantas, they're already talking about mandating the vaccine. They will allow you on an international flight only if you give documentation that you've been vaccinated. So I'm just sharing with you, and I will be doing this along this talk, the broader perspective. Will it alter my DNA, the mRNA? It sounds very genetic, and by the way, if it altered my DNA, I started listening better. My wife would say, yes, bring it on, that's great, but no, it's not going to alter the DNA. And the reason behind that is mRNA never enters the nucleus. The DNA lives inside the nucleus. This vaccine, mRNA, enters the cell, goes to the factory where the printing is done, and then boom, it's gone. It's like a lawnmower who comes, a person, landscaper, who comes, mows your lawn, never enters your house, and just leaves. It's like that. It's never going to enter the DNA or the nucleus where DNA is located. Will the vaccine give me COVID? No, because remember, we're not even sending the virus inside the body. It's a message to actually create a part of the virus. So what we now understand, the whole virus, you don't need to kill the virus. What's the heart of the virus? That's the spike protein. If you kill the spike protein, the virus cannot survive. So actually the message we are sending is not to create the virus inside the body. It's just to create the spike protein so the body can make antibodies against that spike protein. Therefore, this vaccine cannot give you COVID. Is it made in eggs or human fetal cells? I'll tell you, one of my HIV patients many years ago asked me he was allergic to eggs and what to do about it. And me, straight out of fellowship, I said, well, maybe you've eaten all the eggs that were in your quota allocated to you in your life, and you should be fine. And he didn't like my joke. He reminded me after 10 years as well. He said, that was a bad joke. But the point is, this vaccine is not made in eggs. If you're allergic to eggs, you can take it, no cross-reactivity. This vaccine does not utilize human fetal cells. And that is why we're able to do it so fast. The technology is completely different. So those concerns, and I understand there's some ethical concerns, they are not applicable here. Will my COVID PCR test be positive after this vaccine? No. The vaccine may create, the idea is to produce antibodies in your system. And whether an antibody test will be positive, likely yes. We don't know for sure. But for sure, I can tell you your PCR or your antigen test will not be positive as a result of the vaccine. Will the efficacy be lower than 90% in real life? That's a great question, because one has said efficacy is 94% for Moderna, maybe 90% for Pfizer. I will not be surprised if efficacy is lower in real life for the following reasons. One, real life is not as scripted as a clinical trial is. Freezer temperatures may go up and down. People may skip their second dose. A lot of social distancing factors could be different. But even if this vaccine was anywhere 70 or 75%, effective, it'll be enough for us to crush this pandemic. Many of us in the infectious disease community were actually shocked to hear a number like 90%. I was never expecting it. I thought it'll be 50 to 75% effective. So yes, it's likely that it'll drop, but it'll still be enough to crush the pandemic. What was the outcome measured, COVID or antibody testing? It was the COVID. How many people actually developed the disease? So that's the right outcome measure. And I believe that they're actually reaching for 130 or 140. They call it incidence out of those 30 or 40,000 patients. But isn't the vaccine rushed? You will see some questions. I've tried to expand them because I saw a theme. I saw multiple people asking the same question, so I'm trying to give you a more in-depth answer there. So the answer is no, but this is how vaccines are developed. If you look at it, why it was a 10 to 15-year process, because it took us a year or two from discovery to preclinical stage, and then manufacturing, and then enrolling patients in multiple phases, and then approvals. Now remember, the first step that took 1 or 2 years, in this case took 5 days. And the reason is not because it was rushed, because we had a lot of experience with SARS and MERS, so the targets were already identified. And once again, the example I'll give you, if you printed an 800-page, a full page, and you just type the full page, and I just did cut and paste, is it rushed? If you type it every time and I cut and paste every time, am I bad? No, I'm just using technology. That's precisely what they're doing here. They're going through a very different process. They're not growing these cells in cell lines. They're just using mRNA, and within 5 days, they actually knew how to position the mRNA so it will be most immunogenic. Preclinical state, that's what we talked about. Factories, of course, vaccine developers and pharmaceutical industry does not want to put years and years of work if billions of dollars are going to go to waste. In this particular case, the government gave them guarantees, and that is what sped up the process further. And they were able to do simultaneous factory building and capacity building. Otherwise, usually you would wait for a vaccine, then you'll start thinking about building capacity 3 years later. This was happening simultaneously. And of course, if you are doing a Lyme vaccine trial or salmonella trial, it's going to take you many years to enroll patients. How many patients of Lyme or salmonella we have in the U.S.? But unfortunately, since you had literally millions of patients, and these companies went global, over 100 sites, so they could enroll these patients very, very quickly in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials. And that is how that whole process that took 10 to 15 years was compressed into 10 to 15 months. But I don't feel that that's called rushed. I made this point this morning as well. You don't want to cut the corners, but you want to cut the crap. And I think in this particular case, we cut the crap. People talk about efficacy. 90% efficacy should be looked upon in context. I still think you should take a flu shot, but these are the numbers for flu shot. For the past 10 years, flu vaccine has hovered within these numbers. For the past 5 years, if you looked at flu vaccines, efficacy is 34%, 5-year combined. Once again, please, the message is not that don't take a flu shot next year, because that's still what we've got. But compare that 34% with COVID vaccines efficacy, that's close to 90%. I told you my passion may come through during this talk, but you cannot look at those numbers and not feel happy and excited that yes, we have an end in sight, and yes, mankind can crush this pandemic. Who will get the vaccine? What's the likely process? We don't know fully, but of course, for now, it says that healthcare workers, frontline workers will get it, perhaps nursing home and elderly patients, then other essential workers out there, teachers, bus drivers, God knows, all those millions of people who have essential roles in our society, and then people with immunocompromised condition, which brings me to the second bundle of 7 questions. I am immunocompromised. Should I get the vaccine? Absolutely. This vaccine is not going to give you the virus. It's only going to stimulate antibodies. You are at risk of a bad infection. I would say, please get it. Can I choose between Pfizer or Moderna? Wow, what an optimist. I love that. But yeah, short answer is no. It's going to be an allocation, whichever one we get. I believe that's the one you will have to choose. Can we mix and match two vaccines for the first and second dose? Again, the answer is no. There may be mRNA vaccines. Their storage is different. They're different products. We don't know. That has not been tested. So again, that's not advised. Do we have freezers to store the vaccine at minus 70 temperature? Great question. By the way, many of these questions actually made me go back and check my answer and look for more information. We have two freezers, two here at Upper Chesapeake, two at Hartford Memorial, and Dr. Barreto just confirmed before this talk. One of them is simply a backup freezer. They have temperature sensors. If they lose temperature in one of those freezers, the vaccine can go in the backup freezer. How we monitor the cold chain of the vaccine, as I said, the Pfizer has done this for many, many years, and they send you this vaccine tightly packed with dry ice, with temperature monitors, and you bring it from there into the freezer. Should vaccine administration, no, not admiration, but administration be staggered? So, for example, 5 people, that tells you I was working on it up until 5 minutes ago, and admiration for this vaccine in my mind just came through. So we will make sure that not 5 ID docs all get the vaccine on the same day, not 5 people working on the front desk in the emergency room get it on the same day. Good idea. We will try to stagger it. Will I be given time off after vaccine? Should I schedule a break around that day? These are real questions, by the way. And I may have edited your question because it was a paragraph. I may have shrunk it to a line, but I've tried to stay very true to the spirit of your question. The short answer is no. The reason being, 90% or more people will have no side effects or minimal side effects. Not enough for you to say, I want a day break. And number 2, yes, it's always smart to schedule it around your time off. If you know that you're working 3 shifts this week and your last shift is on Wednesday, I'd say great, get your vaccine scheduled on Wednesday or Thursday. What to expect? So this is important. There's something called reactogenicity to a vaccine. When you get a flu shot, your arm may hurt, you may develop a little bit of fever, you may have a headache. Now, what is known so far is the reactogenicity of this vaccine could be higher than a flu shot, could be higher than a pneumonia vaccine. Some of this is unknown, but I'm going to err on the side of caution and caution you to expect a little bit more acute side effects, which means you may have a headache. 2% or 3% of 3.8% people who took the Pfizer vaccine had a headache, but those numbers were a little higher for the Moderna vaccine. Almost 10% of people had fatigue, 9% had muscle pain. If you compare this with most regular vaccine, these are higher numbers, which means you should expect to feel a little sick day after you get the vaccine. That's not any long-term damage. That's just your body making 10,000 copies. So it's important for us to remember that. Are there any long-term side effects? I must address this question head-on because that's extremely rare for vaccines to have long-term side effects. Most of the side effects manifest themselves within the first month. After that, it's extremely rare. What you should know, in this particular case, over 35,000 people between both Moderna and Pfizer trial, let's say half of them received the placebo, 75,000 people in both trials. Over 35,000 have received the real vaccine. They're now 2 months out. And so far, we haven't heard anyone coming down with crazy long-term side effects or autoimmune diseases or anything. So just remember, it's not 1 or 2 people, 35,000 people in multiple countries, many of them in the U.S., who are now more than 2 months out. Now, there's always a chance of a rare side effect, and I don't want to oversell it. And as I said earlier, I'm not a Pfizer rep. I'm not a Moderna rep. This is not my job to persuade you. Just trying to put the science there. I'll come back to a point, but here is perspective. This is how 1 in a million looks. There is one green dot. All of these boxes represent 1 million people. One box is 10,000 people. One small brick right there is 100. Every red dot means 100 deaths. That's actual. That's what COVID has done. In U.S., if you prorated our numbers, let's say, 300, just for easy math, 300 million people and 300,000 deaths, that is our current death rate. That's actual. Those red dots are dead people, right? 1,000 a million. There's a green dot. Can you find that? Literally, I promise you it's there. And you're not going to be able to find it. I know that because I've tried it. I can print it out for you, and you will see it's there. But that's what 1 in a million look. Because many a time when we hear about 1 in a million, we fear that that's going to be me. But those are the odds. But let me just go back and talk about the autism story. Because that's really the mother of all evil when it comes to long-term side effects of vaccine. We didn't think along those lines up until 1998, when a very prestigious journal, Lancet, published a study that autism could be linked with the MMR, the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine. Most of us heard that, and then some very famous people got on TV and started talking about it, probably from good intent. I don't want to question anyone's intent, but it generated a lot of controversy. People didn't know. How many patients were in that Lancet study? Any guesses? 12 kids. And they had symptoms that would meet the autism spectrum. Later on, it's called the Wakefield study. And later on, Lancet discovered that those 12 parents, the attorneys who were suing the vaccine company, had also funded that study. There were unethical issues discovered as a result. A big deal. 12 years later, Lancet retracted that study. Many studies have come out since debunking that thing. But that reminds me of what Mark Twain said, that falsehood will travel around the globe while truth is still wearing its pants. That's very, very true. We're dealing with that even today, but unfortunately, that's the story. Another big question people ask, aren't we getting enough natural immunity through infection? Do we even need a vaccine? Most studies, up until this is September 26th data, up until then, the projected numbers for U.S. were around 10% of population. We did a serious study in our own hospital that was less than 3%. You be very generous. You say, well, we're making mistakes. We're not testing everyone. Let's say 20%. The lowest herd immunity threshold is at 50% that I've seen. It's variable. Some people think differently. Traditionally, it was 70%. We don't want us to go from 20% to 50%. That means repeating this whole year one more time just to get to 40%. And if you have a vaccine today, that's why waiting for herd immunity is a bad idea. Next question, bundle, but now I'm telling you up front that these are unknowns. Don't expect very sure answers. Can pregnant women and children take it? As of now, we don't know the risk. Pregnant females were not in those trials, so my answer would be no. Pfizer is now including patients from the age of 12. They are going to continue to gradually bring that age down. They will continue to enroll those patients who are already in the trial, but then become pregnant later on, subsequently. They're going to study those patients for pregnant subjects. But as of today, the vaccine has not been studied in those two groups. Antibody-dependent enhancement, does it happen or no? It's a very interesting scientific idea, which essentially means that if you already have antibodies in your system generated by a vaccine, and then you get the infection, will you get severe disease? The short answer is we don't know for sure, but there's a very good paper in September of Nature magazine, the journal Nature, which essentially talks about why it's extremely unlikely. Just wanted to make sure you knew. We'll talk more about it next Wednesday. Will a vaccinated person need to wear a mask? So far, the answer is yes. Don't argue with me. I understand. Common sense is on your side. But CDC says yes, and that's only because people want to be extra cautious. looking at it from a public health standpoint, not from an individual risk standpoint? So the answer is yes. Will one of the future vaccines be even better than this one? Possibly, but we don't know that. Which immunity lasts longer, natural infection or vaccine? Once again, we don't know that. If you absolutely pin me down, I'd say probably the vaccine, but today we don't know that answer, and that is why there's another question I'll come to in a few minutes. Why is the liability for safety is relied on the patient and not on the government, vaccine manufacturer, or the institution? Good question. I didn't want to censor it. I don't think I have a great answer. To me, I think today it's a choice that I'm making. I'm weighing one risk versus another. The vaccine is not mandated. I'm making the choice. So that's a short answer. What if I already had COVID and recovered from it? Will I be bumped to the back on the priority line? I don't know that answer. Again, we'll wait for the system guidance on that. And that's another beauty within this pandemic. I think it has brought a lot of systemness for all of us, where we sort of get strength from each other in this collective decision making. Here's another little myth out there that COVID isn't deadly. I wanted to go at head on. These are the deaths of HIV compared with COVID. If you look at it in the past 20 years, AIDS has not killed as many Americans in 20 years as COVID did in 1 year. And those of us who work with HIV patients, I can tell you, I cannot remember the last time one of my HIV patients were admitted to the hospital. And I tell them at day 0 when they come in, I say, hey, dude, if you go into the hospital for gallbladder, I'm okay with that. But if you get into a hospital because of HIV-related complications, I mean, I didn't do my job. So COVID has killed enough people in 1 year that HIV hasn't done in 20 years. Don't let someone tell you it's not killing enough Americans. Just come round with me one day. So skipping the vaccine is not just safe. It's exchanging one risk with another. It's your choice. Once again, I don't want to persuade you. But this is how I analyzed it in my own head. People say vaccines may trigger a long-term autoimmune disease. Well, that's a may. That's a hypothetical. I don't know the answer. What I do know, that most viral infections can also trigger an autoimmune disease. What I do know that 7,000 people are getting hospitalized with COVID every day. These are not just test positives. These are not just sniffles. 7,000 a day. And what we do know that up to 20% of COVID patients don't feel back to normal, even after 2 or 3 months. We don't know enough, but those are the realities. So to compare them with the hypothetical risk of vaccine, that's how I analyzed it in my head, and I wanted to share with you. And this is another good thought. Some very smart people have said this to me. Let me wait it out a few months. Once again, nothing wrong with it. How did I analyze that? So in my head, all right, what's available now and what's my risk today? My daily risk is that about 175,000 people are getting it. I'm no exception. I will get it too. I'm working on the front line. These are not all mild infections. 90,000 of them are in a hospital any given day, 7,000 entering into a hospital every day. Cumulative number is 90,000. What makes me an exception? They always say, like it started with breast cancer, where women used to think it won't happen to me. Well, it'll happen to anyone. Virus disease process does not discriminate. 1 in 39 seconds. That's how many people are dying of it. So that's my risk. If I wait, I'm taking that chance. If I don't wait, well, what am I doing? As I said earlier, 35,000 people out there have gotten this vaccine. They're now 2 months out. They waited. They've done that waiting for me. That 2-month period is up. And they're doing well. And that number is only going to increase every day. I'm not going to tell you which side to pick. Everybody has their own risk tolerance. But at least that's how I analyze that risk in my own head. And then what if I'm only 28 years old? I'm not likely to die. I'm not likely to come to the hospital. You're right. Your risk of death is much lower. Your risk of survival is much higher. But guess what? This is what happened in Maine. So the point I'm about to make, you can kill someone else. That's the point. Not just about you. It could be about your grandfather. In August, 55 people attended a wedding in Maine. Only one person had COVID. As a result of that one person, the virus spread to 176 other people. In the end, 7 people died who never attended the wedding. So you're 28 years old. If you're living in a bubble, I think you're probably very accurate. Wait it out. If you're not living in a bubble, there are people around you who are counting on your responsible behavior, and you're really going to define what that responsible behavior is. I'm not going to tell you. Here's my last bundle of 9 questions. See, it went from 7 to 9. I just wanted to see who's paying attention. I had to squeeze as many here on the last slide. Again, many of them are unknowns. Will there be a need for an annual booster-like flu shot? We don't know that today. I hope not. I hope we crush this pandemic by next year and it becomes optional. We don't know that. Can I take this vaccine with a flu shot or a pneumonia vaccine at the same time? Not a great idea because of overlapping side effects and acute side effects. That's why we tried to get done with a flu shot drive, but we don't know the answer there either. Will there be another opportunity to get vaccinated if I decline it for now? I actually got this question, very calculated. Whoever has submitted this question, you should teach negotiation classes. It's a great question. The short answer is yes, but again, if we have supply, I don't know where the supply is going to be 3 months from now when you come back. So short answer is yes, if we have it, chances are you'll get it. What's the comparison between antiviral medications and vaccines? I said it in the other conference the other day, and listen to it carefully. I believe the strongest medications against COVID are going to be weaker than the weakest vaccine, which means treatments are junk. We don't have great treatments right now. There is not a treatment that I can tell you will give you 90% efficacy. What are the risks if the desired temperature cannot be maintained? The risks are unknown. Typically, those vaccines don't become dangerous. They may lose their effect because the mRNA may disintegrate. I don't know the final answer. I can guarantee you, you will not get such a vaccine, number one. Number two, as I said earlier, we're going to extreme logistical lengths to prevent something like that from happening. If I develop symptoms after the shot, will I be tested, quarantined for how long? We don't know. It will be dependent case by case. If you come to us with an arm that's swollen and a low-grade fever, I don't think there's any need to test. We can see why you're having the fever. If you come to us with joint pains and you tell me you also attended a big party in a restaurant a week before, yeah, I think we will test you. So it will depend case by case. Should we test for antibody and skip the vaccine if someone is already positive? Smart question. Once again, we've tested everyone for an antibody. You know your answers, your results. Anyone in this room who's positive with antibody? I didn't want a HIPAA violation, but I can tell you I was negative, which means I should get the vaccine. And we also know more than 97% team members were negative. So we've done that step. Moreover, another point is we don't know today. Even for those who are positive, they may still benefit from the vaccine. We just don't know that answer. Will older team members be prioritized to get the vaccine first? Don't know, but chances are they will be. I know that our team will work diligently on that. Will team members be allowed to stay home with pay if they develop side effects? We will make this decision as one ounce. Today we don't know that answer, but I think we'll look up to our mothership and give you an answer once it's available. Everybody wants to restart the economy. I wanted to just get to this point in the end. Here are the numbers. That's the reality. This many people are already deferring their bill payments as pandemic wears on. About 35%. They're already 1 month behind. In another 1 to 3 months, that number will go up to 50%. I'm not an economist, therefore I will not go deeper into this. But I wanted to put that point out there because we all want to restart the economy. Well, it's going to require some collective action, guys. Not going to happen just by one person. Let me summarize. over 7,000 Americans are getting hospitalized with COVID every day. Almost 2,000 are dying of COVID daily. That's the fact. Those are the numbers. We can talk of hypotheticals, long-term risks, and they're there. I'm not minimizing that. But this happened yesterday. This is news. This is not analysis. It's very much likely that COVID vaccine will likely be approved, maybe more than one before Christmas. I don't believe it's rushed, and I don't believe it's mandated. So those are the two common themes. I think we covered that. So far, what we are told, efficacy is over 90%. Even if it drops to 80% in real life, I think it's enough to crush the pandemic. 2-month follow-up for over 35,000 people like us are safe, whatever that means. But so far, I have not heard any long-term effects published anywhere. But at the end, remember, nothing is 100% safe. The decision here is not you do this or that. The decision is you measure which risk. So it's from one risk to another. So the story of Jay. You remember that boy? This doctor is that boy. Those words are from Younus Salk. His parents were poor, came from Russia. He was the first in his family to go to college. Went to NYU, from there went to Pittsburgh. Not Ivy League schools, but he had a passion to develop vaccines. When he developed the polio vaccine, this is at the heart of this. This is something way bigger than numbers and data. This has happened to us before as mankind. This is leading by example. You know who he vaccinated in those trials? Himself. He took that vaccine himself before it was approved. Right here, Dr. Salk is giving that vaccine to his son. He gave it to his wife. People who worked with him in the lab took it. At that time, polio was killing over 40,000 Americans. Not killing, I would say, affecting, mutilating, really. I've seen patients who are in their 80s had polio. You don't want to have polio. I'd rather be dead than have polio. It's a mutilating disease. By 1962, those numbers fell to 900. And today, polio is considered eradicated. 1 or 2 countries where there are just a small number of cases. When it came time for Younus Salk to patent the vaccine, he didn't allow that. He said, I don't want to make money out of it. I don't want it to become a business enterprise. I want it to be available to mankind. Was it an easy choice? I don't know. Did he take a risk when he was taking that vaccine? You decide. Just want to make sure that's the history of mankind. We glorify people who land on the moon. We want to be the hero in every movie we watch. And we want to be Younus Salk at right this second. But that's a question. We're talking 70 years in history. I hope when people come 70 years later and they look at this pandemic, I want to be in the right place of that history at that time. Thank you very much. We're going to stop here. Next Wednesday, I'll take more questions. We'll go over any further debate that you would like to hear. I'm sure there are follow-up questions. I want to acknowledge that. But today, boy, you were inundating me. I was just getting emails up until the last minute. So next week, again, thank you very much. Thanks a lot, Martha, to you and your team for all the work. Appreciate it. Thank you, folks.